Hi, and welcome to our webinar, The Ins and Outs of Referrals and Closing the Loop in NextGen EHR. My name is Chelsea Grover, and I'm the Marketing Manager for DAS Health. Before we get started on today's presentation, I want to take a moment to explain the process for the webinar. First, I'd like to mention this webinar will be recorded, and we'll send out a copy of the slides along with the recording within the next week. Next, I wanted to remind you of some super exciting news. Itentiv is now part of DAS Health. DAS Health is a leading provider of health IT and management solutions and a trusted consultant to many physicians groups, hospitals, and healthcare systems across North America. By combining our skills and our expertise, we'll be able to provide even more support, value, and solutions to your practice. We're looking forward to continuing to serve you. And again, I want to reassure you all that we are still here for you. We're still going to be here specializing in NextGen and keeping a focus on you. We're still passionate about providing solutions for our healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. Basically, we will still continue to do everything NextGen. We also still have our NextGen productivity solutions, including ChartGuard, Refund Manager, Unapplied and Deposit Manager, and Multiple Encounter Billing Manager. Next, I wanted to mention some upcoming webinars. In 2 weeks, we'll be presenting Don't Be Surprised by the No Surprises Act. In it, we'll discuss a new piece of legislation that protects against surprise billing and has many requirements that will impact provider practices just like yours. Then in June, we'll cover taking control of your practice's care guidelines in NextGen Enterprise. And then in July, we'll be presenting on expert insights into the NCQA PCMH certification, transformation and annual reporting. So definitely follow us on LinkedIn to get updates about those. And of course, we'll always continue to email you out webinar invites as well. Okay, so back to today's webinars on the ins and outs of referrals and closing the loop in NextGen. At the end of the presentation, we'll open the floor up to questions from you. We'll answer all the questions at the end, but you can type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel whenever they occur to you. And finally, for audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone will remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them. And again, questions may be entered in the questions box. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Helen Lively is Client Solutions Analyst, Lexi DeMarche is Consulting Development Manager, and Lindsay Lanning is Client Development Manager at DAS Health. They're all super eager to share their knowledge with you today. So with that, Helen, I'll let you get started.
Chelsea, I'm actually going to go ahead and get us started and throw us through a loop here. No, you're good. So this is Lindsay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today on, the ins and outs of referrals and closing the loop, specifically in NextGen EHR. I'm going to go ahead and take a wild guess and assume most of you on the call today send referrals on behalf of your providers almost daily. As we all know, referrals are an integral part of a patient's overall care and care coordination right now. And as such, they're tracked very closely by various quality reporting and incentive programs. However, we know it can be difficult to make sure you're following, the exact workflow needed to get credit under these programs and understand all your different options for workflows surrounding sending, receiving, and even closing the loop on these transition of care documents, which is why we're here today. So today you can expect us to not only go over the workflows for sending and receiving referrals, but also take a deep dive into things like the functionalities, the configuration, and even workflow recommendations surrounding NextGen Share, as well as closing the loop and even referral reporting. So we plan to review how clinicians and your staff and your clinical care team can confirm results were received both through document management and the provider approval queue. We're also, and I say we, I really mean Lexi and Holland, are going to walk you through the process of closing the loop from both of those applications that allows for those results received to be linked to the order. Then I plan to emphasize the importance of how these methods will provide better, more reliable care for your patients, all the while, of course, allowing you to more confidently meet your MIPS measures. So let's get started and take your NextGen referral knowledge, one step further. So first, if you know me at all, I always start webinars with the basics. So we're all on the same page here. So a referral, as defined by CMS, is actually a request from one physician or eligible provider to another practitioner for evaluation, treatment, or co-management of a patient's condition. Now, this slide was honestly more for comedic relief more than anything, because believe me, I know you all know what a referral is. However, you would be surprised that many don't understand what closing the loop process actually means, or I shouldn't say don't understand, but we have different, interpretations or perceptions of it. So I did want to define this today. So closing the loop means that the provider who placed an order gets a report on the outcome. The order goes out, an action occurs, and the report comes back to the provider who issued the order. Sometimes we can get confused and think closing the loop is actually the opposite, that the provider who received the referral has to send the report back. And while yes, that is a part of the overall process, it's actually viewed from the other side. So closing the loop is the provider who referred the patient out, that they're responsible for closing the loop and receiving the report back. So why close the loop? It's no secret, I get a lot of feedback that this process can be extremely burdensome on staff, and they just aren't sure where the value lies. But this is extremely important to patient care. Closing the loop is going to allow you to confirm that the appropriate care or action was actually administered or carried out by the patient, which theoretically should eliminate anyone falling through the cracks, and hopefully leave no one within your care team left guessing on what care the patient received, or where they're at in their current treatment plan. And not to mention improved quality measure tracking and performance for your practice, which can lead to incentive money. So let's focus kind of on that last bullet point here for a second on improved quality reporting, and kind of break this down. So I'm sure all of you on this call have heard of or are participating in the MIPS program. Well, these workflows we're going to go over today of sending, receiving, and closing the referral loop are all measures that can earn you points under this program. And this year, you will absolutely need every point you can get. So the MIPS program has 4 categories. They're all different weights counted toward your final score. So this year, PI, or promoting interoperability, is worth 25% or 25 points towards your final score. Improvement activities, they're worth 15% or 15 points towards your final score. And these have not changed from previous years. PI and IA have always been these weights since the inception of the program. What has changed is quality. Quality is now down to only 30% of your final score, or 30 points towards your final score. It used to be somewhere close to 60 or even higher. What that leaves us with is the last category of cost, and that leaves us with the remaining 30 points or 30% towards your final score this year. And this is a big deal because this basically means 30% of your overall score in MIPS, which determines if you receive a penalty or an incentive, is dictated by a category where you don't submit any data on or you don't have any visibility into. CMS is actually taking data from your claims throughout the year and assessing you on cost per Medicare beneficiary, total per capita cost, and then specific episode-based measures. Why it's an even bigger deal is that the threshold this year to avoid a penalty under MIPS is 75 points. This means if you get a perfect score in improvement activities, promoting interoperability, and quality, 3 out of the 4 categories, you're still only earning a 70 out of 100 final score, which is 5 points under that threshold. So I apologize if you're already a MIPS client of mine on here, you've heard this spiel a million times, but you can see, how earning and why earning 100% in each of these 3 categories that we actually submit data on is crucial to avoiding a penalty this year. And again, this isn't a MIPS webinar. I didn't trick you all to joining for this today, but I wanted to point this out. So specifically, the workflows we're going to go over today are going to help you with 2 important measures under the PI category here and 1 measure under the quality category as well. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we're going through these today. So under the PI category, the measures that these workflows are going to help are going to be, 1 is going to be HIE send, or more officially termed support electronic referral loops by sending health information. This is for at least 1 referral, and it's 1 to get credit in a category. You want to score as high as possible, so potentially 100% on this measure if you can. But the MIPS eligible clinician that transitions or refers their patient to another setting of care or a healthcare provider creates a summary of care record using CERT and electronically exchanges that summary of care record. And then the second one, or the flip side of this, is HIE receive, or support electronic referral loops by receiving and reconciling health information. So same thing, it says for at least one, but you need one to get credit. But again, we want to get as high a score as possible on these. But for at least one electronic summary of care record received for patient encounters during the 90-day performance period for which a MIPS eligible clinician was the receiving party of a transition of care or a referral, or for patient encounters during that 90-day reporting period in which the EC has never before encountered the patient, the MIPS clinician conducts clinical information reconciliation for meds, medication allergy, and the current problem list. And each of these measures are worth 20 points out of 100 in the category. So both of these combined count for 40% of your PI category score. And then under quality, there is CMS 50, closing the referral loop, receipt of specialist report. This is the percentage of patients with referrals, regardless of age, for which the referring provider receives a report from the provider to whom the patient was referred to. And it's worth 10 points out of a possible 60 in the category. Now, this quality measure is a great option for everyone since it's not specialty specific. It has a benchmark that's not capped at 7 points this year, meaning you can earn the full 10 points without scoring 100%. And it's much more obtainable than a lot of other ones out there. And I'll go and kind of deep dive into these as we hit each section. So I know I got off on a bit of a MIPS tangent here. I just wanted to make sure everyone understood the significance surrounding referrals in our current healthcare environment. Lexi and Holland will be going over these workflows, and then I'll kind of jump in with a quick MIPS summary slide at the end of each section. So you aren't done with me yet, but they are going to be the ones to show you, much more than just the MIPS workflow. They're going to show you how to complete the correct setup and configuration and so much more. So without further delay, I am going to go ahead and pass it off to Holland, who will take you through the sending and receiving referrals. So Holland, it is all yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay, for that introduction into, the basics that are pretty key in understanding the referral process that we're going to take a look at today. So to begin our first NextGen specific section, we're going to explore the different ways in which referrals can be sent out of your EHR. So first things first, that referral orders module. You might be more familiar with calling this, the referrals tab, possibly when accessing the AP details portion of the SOAP note. So this is probably the most common way to access any sort of, referral send process for your workflows. But it can be used to document both internal and external referrals, as well as including the use of NextGen Share, which we are going to take a look at today as well. From this module, referral attachments and clinical information and comments can be added, as well as tracking the status of the referral from here as well. So additionally, tasks can be sent directly from the referral orders module to the staff responsible for completing the necessary referral process if that's part of your workflows as well. So the first step in sending any referral is to fill out, that to section on the referral order module if you want to reference that screenshot down there at the bottom. So to begin, you're going to select specialty/specialist name or site, and that's going to allow you to indicate the specialty from a wide range of drop-down menu items, as well as prompt you for a provider name. I want to point out that there are some other options you're seeing there. Obstetrics is going to automatically indicate your specialty as obstetrics and then prompt you to select the provider name from a drop-down. Therapies and rehabilitation is going to bring you to a pick list to select whatever type of therapy. And then DME is going to allow you to click in that DME text box, and it's going to actually prompt you to select a SIM code that's going to accompany the referral. So the next step in that referral is to indicate an assessment in the diagnosis section. So if your visit is already underway and a diagnosis has already been added under that My Plan section within the SOAP note already, selecting in the description text box and choosing from a current diagnosis will be the most effective option. However, if you need to add an assessment for that visit, that Add Assessment button you can see there on the screenshot is going to navigate you back to the Assessments tab, in which you can include an assessment where you would just follow, the typical assessment addition workflow. So I want to point out that another, piece of that screenshot that you're viewing there says quote unquote add comment assessment. It's a hyperlink, so it's selectable. And clicking in that option is going to bring you to a pop-out that's going to return some common diagnosis descriptions based on the comment assessment the user selects. So for example, choosing the common assessment, adult assessment female, is going to return what your NextGen system has been configured to include in that category as a common assessment. And that data is actually managed on the Common Diagnoses Framework Practice template. So from there, our next step, there are a few different clinical information sections that are available for the user to, indicate and kind of utilize. So first, the services requested radio button selections are going to allow for the selection of a consult, evaluate and treat, follow up and treat, and assume care. Alongside those indications with those radio buttons, you're also given the ability to check off either surgery or diagnostic testing. You will note that there's a difference in the radio button versus the checkbox. So you can select and check what is needed. And then next is that clinical indication section, which is going to include the reason for referral. So selecting in that text box is going to prompt the user to select, whichever pick list item is most applicable to that referral. And then also in that clinical indication section, you can select a time limit and a time frame. So for example, in would be the time limit, and then 2 weeks would be the time frame. So last is the clinical information or comment section that is basically just, a free text ability for the user to add any sort of comments that they want to be included within that referral. So referrals can also include attachments. And, the user who is, initiating that referral has the ability to include said attachments. An example of a referral or an attachment that you might want to include in a referral could be a referral request letter, an intake note, possibly a patient image, or maybe even, a document management image. And I do want to note that items from sensitive encounters can be included, and you'll see that indicator highlighted above here. It's kind of indicated there with that red text. So just a few other items to note regarding, referral attachments. So files from external devices that are maybe, for example, saved onto your local drive typically are not able to be attached to a referral. Also, just for size purposes, the referral message, including any sort of CCDA and any attachments, should not exceed, 10 MBs there. So keeping that in mind. So the workflow to actually add an attachment comes in that attachments dialog box within the same referral orders module, that we've been looking at and working out of. So once you select the details icon above that attachments grid, it's going to open up that box, and you're going to want to select any of the blank attachment boxes, where then it's going to bring you and prompt you to select any of the available documents that it's listing out, or any of the other items to attach to the referral. So as you can see, you have up to 8 attachments that can be included. And as always, just a couple more things to note. For a document or image, or anything else that you might be attaching to that referral to be selectable in that dialog box, it must first have been saved as part of the patient's current encounter or as a part of a previous patient record. There is another indicator from this dialog box that you will see if you do happen to attach anything from a sensitive encounter. You'll see it in red text above that attachment 1 or attachment 2 or wherever that information is coming from as well. So upon completion, of the previous outlined steps, you've gone through steps 1 through 4. The last step is going to be to select add to save that referral to the encounter. So the referral then can be tasked out to a referral team if further action is needed. You can, use the send task or even the quick task button. And then it's going to appear there in that referral ordered section at the very bottom of the referral orders module. And I do want to note, if you're looking at that section, it is going to automatically default to showing your incomplete referrals, but there is a radio button where you can navigate over to also view your completed referrals just by selecting in that completed radio button. So we take a couple steps back. You'll remember, when we were indicating that to section with, the specialty, we went on to manually search and select from a pre-created pick list of providers. Another way to complete that search is to utilize NextGen Share. So NextGen Share allows for secure clinical data exchange to external EHR systems or providers, via a nationwide network. That's going to give providers the ability to search for external organizations and providers. It's compiled from data sources such as other NextGen EHR customers, any externally submitted providers, or other HIEs that have signed a third-party agreement. It also gives providers the ability to compose and transmit clinical data securely, which is a huge aspect. NextGen Share Search provides access to, you also have a recently used list as well as a favorites list, as indicated in the above graphic. So you can see that stopwatch there. It kind of looks like a clock. That's going to allow the user to access any sort of recently, referred out NextGen Share providers. And that yellow star is going to be, how they can indicate a favorites list if there's, a certain list of users that they're frequently kind of referring out to. The other icon that you can see, it kind of looks like a black spy. That's going to allow the user to hide any providers. That's going to be up to the provider as to whether or not they want to hide or, what kind of functionality they want to utilize with that. But I do want to point out that that hide functionality came in version 5.9.2. So you will need to be 5.9.2 and above to see that, our little spy guy there. So additional ways to kind of customize the search that are going to be available to the user is to select off the directories that you wish to search. So you can see the checkboxes there. My EHR is going to search the last 20 NextGen Share providers that you've referred out to. And then Share is going to actually search the entire NextGen Share database. I also want to point out when you're, searching via that provider name, organization name, or NPI, you will have to enter at least 3 characters to initiate that search. So when you're utilizing NextGen Share, as well as to get MIPS HIE send credit, the above fields that are highlighted there with those blue boxes, they must be filled out. Another thing to make note of is in that bottom there, after submitting add, you're going to need to highlight your referral and then indicate that share button down there on the bottom that's highlighted there in blue as well. So the actual workflow to use NextGen Share is the most impacted in selecting a provider. So again, it's going to pull from that nationwide network of providers rather than going through the manual search. And that icon picture above is a selectable icon that you'll find in the referral orders module. So that red icon there, that's going to actually launch NextGen Share from the referral order modules there. So then once you complete the search fields and you fill out, whether it be provider name or NPI, it's going to kind of return what you can see here as that NextGen Share search window here. And then you would just select the necessary provider by clicking on their direct address. And that's the workflow there to kind of utilize NextGen Share. A big aspect of NextGen Share is the automatic send of the CCDA. I do want to point out too that the checkbox labeled summary of care/records sent that you see in the referral orders module, that automatically gets checked off in the referral order module when you utilize NextGen Share. So I mentioned earlier that the NextGen Share database includes providers that were submitted by users. So I'm sure you're wondering, how exactly can my practice go about doing that? How can you add, an external provider to NextGen Share? The process is actually fairly simple. You'll just navigate into that Share community login that your administrator probably has, and then you'll go into Add External Providers and enter, the search criteria that you would like to add. So you can search by NPI, organization, or provider name, again, very similar to the actual functionality within NextGen Share. And then after making this selection, the information will autofill the values in the provider and practice information. So it's going to pull whatever information it already has. But you also have the ability to manually add or override that information if necessary. So if you're seeing something and it needs to be updated, you can click in those boxes and kind of free text. So upon successful submission after selecting, that submit for review and processing, a confirmation email is going to appear and it's going to send out to that NextGen Share administrator, and the provider is then going to be selectable in the NextGen Share search field within the EHR. So another aspect, when considering sending a referral is that medical summary utility, or MSU for short, as I'll refer to it from now on. So referrals can be sent to outside providers or organizations utilizing the MSU. A CCDA can be generated to include clinical information that will be sent to the recipient of the referral, and the document generated in the MSU is sent electronically using NextGen Share. I also want to point out that the MSU may not automatically appear as a menu item under the utilities dropdown, but if not, fairly easy, you can customize your menu to include that MSU. So to send a referral from the MSU, the document will be created and the destination details will be entered. So you'll need to search for the patient associated with the referral order if a chart was not already open, and then select the encounter or encounters that you want to include clinical data for that referral. Another note to make is that data from sensitive encounters is not included in the document automatically, but it can be manually included by a user. The last step in the creation or sending of a referral document in the MSU is in that destination section to document any general information such as the document title, referral reason, and referring provider details. So then to actually send the referral document from the MSU using NextGen Share, in that destination or endpoint dropdown, you're going to want to click it and select NextGen Share. Clicking that To button under the direct information section is going to actually open the NextGen Share search window. And an existing referral order can be linked to the document, under that associated referrals dropdown. And you also have the ability to preview. So you can review there by selecting that preview icon. And then, lastly, upon clicking export, a confirmation is going to pop up indicating that that referral has been sent.
Okay, so back to me again. It's Lindsay again. Just going to jump in here and call out some important MIPS reminders related to the workflow Holland just covered. So first and foremost, the only way to get credit for the HIE send measure for PI in the NextGen HQM is to use either NextGen Share or the medical summary utility. I will say I don't have a single client actually right now using the MSU for credit, but it is an option. Far and above the most used is the NextGen Share method, so that's what I'm going to focus on for my tips and tricks for today. Now, important things to note when using NextGen Share. So clinicians or staff, who's ever placing the referral, they have to use that orange NG Share button to access the directory. You have to click this button. We can't go around it. I've had many clients who want to access it different ways or want a free text in there. You've got to select that button, which will open up the directory, and then you have to select an individual provider within the directory. You cannot select a practice or a clinic that's listed. I know many of you do not care about the specific provider that the patient sees. Maybe you just have a clinic in mind, but you won't get credit if you don't select a specific provider. So again, right now, I have clients who are selecting a individual provider and they're inputting in the notes section, patient can see first available clinician. But very important also, again, don't free text anywhere in the specialty or clinicians fields. We see this all the time and you're not getting credit and the referral's not actually being sent anywhere. Another thing I see is that everything for the referral is filled out. You hit that add button, and then we actually forget to select the referral in the grid and actually hit the share button. So many times when I'm going back and working field encounters for clients, all I had to do was select it and hit share. So easy for me, but could have been done the first time. But that's kind of the most forgotten step, I would say, that last final select in the grid and then hit the share button. Another barrier with this measure, and I hear this a lot, is that the provider they're trying to send the referral to is not in the NextGen Share directory. And if that's the case, two options. You can reach out to the practice and ask for their direct address. You can also try searching them on the NPES website. That's NPPES. CMS just recently required all providers to update their direct address information last year. Now, I will say there were no penalties associated with this mandate, so I can't promise everyone did it, but it is worth a shot. And once you get a direct address, as you saw, you can add them or that provider to the NextGen Share directory, no problem, to then send the CCDA. Now, it is possible that the provider you're trying to send the referral to does not have a direct address at all. And if this is the case, you unfortunately just cannot send the CCDA or get credit. And I understand this seems unfair, but there's really nothing we can do. There's no workaround for this. If there's no direct address, it can't be sent. And then finally, if you notice, there's an internal referral checkbox that's right under the provider name field. If you check this, it will remove the encounter from the HIE send measure denominator. And CMS has stated they don't care either way. If you choose to include or exclude internal referrals in that measure, just make sure to be consistent. So again, if it's an internal referral and you check that checkbox, it's going to remove that from this HIE send measure. And it doesn't matter either way. If you would like to include it because you know all your providers have direct addresses, feel free. And then one more thing, just to check for this measure, are your settings in your HQM. So you can actually exclude surgery and PT orders from this measure. And you would do this by looking in the HQM under Config, PI settings, and it's the exclusions tab, and you select the little gear icon up at the top. And I get that this gets a little confusing, but if you want to exclude these, which I recommend if you would like a smaller HIE send denominator, but again, it is totally practice preference. I know there are some certain cases where we want to include them. You would want both of these unchecked. So if you want to exclude them, you want to leave them unchecked. So that's the screenshot you're seeing on the screen right there. And then some more important information pertaining to this measure. In order to get credit before you send the CCDA, you have to make sure that meds, allergies, and problems data are included. You can do this by making sure all three are updated or reconciled in the templates, and then check the CCDA after and confirm it, one, actually sent, it didn't error out, and check that that information was included. So you would do this by going to the patient history toolbar and clicking the categories tab, and then expanding the transition of care referral sent, that little section there that you're seeing, and then you can actually click on the CCDA to view it. Also, and this is in the white paper, but you have to make sure that birth sex and current gender fields are filled out in demographics. I actually have not had this be an issue with a client in probably 2 or 3 years now, but still, just make sure, if you're looking through any failing encounters, you're seeing the CCDA was sent, there's no rhyme or reason to what could be missing, just check there. You can check and file maintenance, and you can actually default birth sex to set to current gender, and then you shouldn't have a problem moving forward. And then last, but certainly not least, one great thing about this measure is that you can go back at any point within your 90-day reporting period. Again, this is a PI measure, so it's only 90 days. And you can work failing encounters by resending these CCDAs if you need to. Again, they just have to be sent within your 90-day reporting period. So if you have to go in and, maybe someone forgot to hit the share button like we talked about, or maybe they left off the medications, maybe there weren't any allergies on the encounter, but they forgot to hit no active or no allergies, you can go in and send or resend a CCDA as long as you're within that specified reporting period. And the HQM can actually provide you a list of failing encounters called a treatment opportunity report. So you just have the list of encounters to go ahead and work before the end of that 90 days. Okay, so back to your, I'll call regularly scheduled programming. Holland, it is all yours for receiving a referral.
Awesome, thanks again. So now that we've kind of taken a look at, the workflow around sending the referral out of your NextGen EHR and the different opportunities your staff is going to have to, complete that referral and indicate certain aspects of it. So let's take a look at, what it looks like when you're receiving a referral and how it may come into the inbox, as well as, another brief introduction from Lindsay regarding, the HIE receive and MIPS measures there. So the first instance we're going to take a look at is receiving a referral from NextGen Share. This is going to be a common workflow among your staff, and some of this is maybe review for a lot of you on the line, but if not, go ahead and engage. So when receiving a referral via NextGen Share, it typically routes into the provider's inbox, and a few things can happen. A direct match may be found for an established patient, and that CCDA, as well as any attached documents, are going to be saved into the patient's chart, and the provider and any routed users are going to receive a task in their inbox. When I say a direct match, I mean that patient has been seen before and a direct address is found for the provider. If a direct match is not found, the clinical message manager, formerly known as Rosetta, is going to hold that referral. And then from there, it can be decided if the referral needs to be manually matched or if a new patient creation is required, as well as maybe needing to respond to the sender via direct message. So to actually view that referral, open that inbox notification related to the referral you wish to view, and you can access that information in the patient category tab within that patient history toolbar. Providers also have the ability to view HIE documentation from incoming referrals with some configuration on the back end in their PAQ. So the provider sign-off setup tool is going to have to be enabled for providers to receive any of that NextGen Share referral HIE documentation in their PAQ, and that's done in System Administrator. So in System Admin, you're going to want to select the practice and navigate to View, Provider Sign-Off Setup, and select the Setup tab. You're going to need to ensure that HIE documents down here on the bottom right is checked off. So again, that allows documents incoming from NextGen Share or any other HIE documents to be sent into the provider's PAQ and viewable from there. So functionality-wise, inbound referrals can be accessed from the PAQ, and upon receipt, providers can perform any typical PAQ actions, such as reassigning, sending a task, or opening up the patient's chart, prior to signing off on that referral document. So the clinical reconciliation module also provides, a hub for any sort of inbound referral. When an HIE document is received with a referral, the data can be imported into the patient's chart in NextGen. So within that clinical reconciliation module, you're going to want to navigate into that import tab and select the appropriate CCDA under the document section. From there, you will manually select the data that needs reconciled, all of which is going to be listed in the tabs below the import tab, as shown in that screenshot there on the screen. So upon selection, an icon is going to display to identify any sort of matching data, and users can also manually match the data. So next, they're going to be sure to select the appropriate action option for the EHR data. So keep means, no action is taken. Stop is going to stop the selected medication, pretty specific to medications there. Delete is going to remove items from the patient's chart. And I do want to note that you can't delete any items associated with a locked encounter. And then resolve is going to resolve a medication allergy or problem. You're also going to need to select the appropriate action item for import data. None, meaning no action is taken and no data is logged in reconciliation history. Ignore, meaning no action is taken and data is logged in reconciliation history. Any data that matches an existing EHR record will have default action of ignore, just to make note of that. Then add item is going to be added to the patient's chart, and any data that is not matched is considered new to the EHR, therefore it's going to have that default action of add. And replace is actually going to allow the selected item to replace that existing item found in the patient's chart. So another, small functionality that NextGen provides that some of you may be seeing and kind of wondering about is that referring provider link that is commonly found on the patient information bar. The referring provider link provides your practice the ability to document, very quick, small aspects of the patient encounter regarding referrals. And I know I mentioned that you might be seeing it on your patient information bar. If not, it's just going to need some additional configuration to be included there. But it allows you the ability to include the referring provider and the reason for referral on the visit documentation, as well as make selections under the provider's encounter section of the patient provider template. And you also have the ability to indicate the need to CC a provider, for example, the referring provider, on the chart note for that day's visit. So just a small portion of, some additional functionality around referrals that NextGen offers.
Perfect. So that is my cue to go ahead and step in and go over a quick MIPS review on what this workflow meets under the PI category. So for HIE receive, you can actually get credit for this in a few different ways. First is the clinical reconciliation, which is the workflow we reviewed above. Next is actually, if you have care quality in place, it's actually an add-on, but it does automatically query for CCDAs. And last but not least is what I have termed as manual acceptance, which we'll actually look at next. It is important to note, though, that the HIE receive, similar to HIE send, does require that medications, allergies, and problems be included or be reconciled to get credit, no matter what. And same kind of deal here with HIE send. Clinicians can actually go back and work any failing encounters within the 90-day reporting period and still get credit. Now, as promised, I'll take you, very briefly through the workflow in NextGen for HIE receive, that manual acceptance. So unlike HIE send, there should be no reason you can't get 100% on this measure with this workflow. If you go back and work the TOs before the end of the reporting period, there's no barriers to this measure like there are with HIE send when you can't find a direct address. So to get credit, you would first go into the intake template and click the transition into care hyperlink that's right under the general panel. And when you click this, the pop-up is going to show that you see on the screen right now. You'll have actually a line item show in the summary of care, that top grid. We were obviously in our test database, so we couldn't recreate that. But you would actually select it and then hit add selected, and then save and close. Next, you would just scroll down in intake to medications and allergies and make sure both have been reconciled or reviewed. If there are no medications, make sure to mark no active medications. And if there are no allergies, make sure to mark no allergies, but also marked one of the reviewed options. There's 2 radio buttons. Yes, you have to do both for allergies if you don't have any documented. Next, you would go to the histories template and you would make sure the problems list panel is reviewed. And same thing, if there's no active problems, you have to hit both no active problems and reviewed. Trust me on this, with lots of reworking encounters in my past, just hit both options. But that, unfortunately, is not all. While the medication reconciliation, allergy reviewed, and problems review checkboxes in the templates theoretically should also change the badges or the buttons found in the patient information bar across the top, sometimes they don't. So if any badge or button shows a question mark out of the ones we highlighted and not a number, you're going to have to actually open it and click no active, no active meds, no active allergies, etc. It's okay to have a 0 there, you just can't have a question mark. And please note there are some specialties like ophthalmology and I believe cardiology, but I can't remember for sure. Ophthalmology, I know for sure, that do not actually have the problems list panel on their specialty specific templates. And you would have to open a new template and select the radio button all. And then you'd be able to see the option for asterisk histories template. And those are the screenshots you see on the right of how to do this. And that's how you would be able to do that final step of reconciling the problems list. Okay, well, I will go ahead and pass it off to Lexi to wrap things up and go over closing the loop on referral orders.
All right, thanks so much, Lindsay. So as Lindsay mentioned, we're really going to go over now how we can close the loop on your referral orders and kind of what that means from your practice, not only from a documentation standpoint, but as you can probably guess the theme here, we will have Lindsay jump back in and touch on some additional opportunities to earn points under MIPS while you're completing this workflow. So first, I just want to give some background when we talk about closing the loop. Kind of one of the main ways that this can be done in NextGen is to allow either clinicians or office staff or a combination of both to link those scanned documents or reports that you might receive back in response to a referral So this can be done in document management and the provider approval queue. This is kind of one of the main ways that you can kind of close that loop, and linking of those document management images. It does require a little bit of configuration. So let's take a look at that. So the first piece of configuration will actually be found in Practice Preferences. So you will go to the Orders Module tab, and you'll see this kind of screenshot that we have here. It gives you some options for when you're actually going through and linking items, to the referral order, how you want those items to be updated. So we can see on the right-hand side there, we have the option. So this does apply for, diagnostic and lab orders, which that's a great functionality, but not really our focus for today. Really the option here that you would want to make sure you have something selected for is referrals. So our options are basically completed or result received. So you can kind of choose, there's not really a right or wrong answer, it's just a matter of verbiage. So what you would like to see once that linking actually completes, but basically it's gonna attach that verbiage to the order and then allows your staff who's maybe tracking, again, to see either the completed or results received depending on your practice. So in addition to that, another really important piece, because it doesn't really work without it, is we need to go into file maintenance in our system master files. And for any document type that could potentially be linked to an order, we need to go into that document type master file, and we'll see that highlighted checkbox here, that potential order result. We'll need to make sure that is checked off. So that's going to be a really important step, because otherwise, when you are scanning, so that document report image, and if you don't have this checked off, your users aren't going to see the option to be able to actually then link it to an order and close that loop. So again, you just want to make sure to do this for any document types that could potentially have order results. Okay, so once we've done, you can see it's not a ton of configuration, just a little bit of background configuration. Then we're able to actually use this functionality. So as I already kind of mentioned, there's really two main ways that you can link documents. And when I say document, it's anything from document management. So anything really that's scanned in. So report, maybe an MRI, a document note, like a chart note from a visit. So one of the first ways, probably the most commonly that I see actually in practice being used, is within document management itself. So really at the time that image is being scanned in, it can then just be directly linked to the order. So it kind of is a logical time to do it. And then that way, once that order is sent on to the clinician, it's there's no extra steps on their end. So you can do this, like I said, at the time of scanning. But also this can be done retroactively. So actually you can go back into document management and look up previously scanned items and link them. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the same person who's scanning is also the same person linking. That doesn't have to be the case. So basically we go through our normal process of scanning in an image. And then at the very bottom, as long as we remembered that important piece of setup to check off that potential order result, we will see down at the bottom this screenshot here, so that link section. You'll click on that referrals button. So that radio button is going to filter out then only referral orders. You can see you can also filter by start date if you'd like to do that, kind of narrow down the list a little further. So then the user would check off the appropriate order for referral that this document applies to. And then in the bottom right, you would go ahead and click that complete button. So that is going to do a couple of things. The main focus obviously here is updating that status of that order. So from order to either completed or result received, just depending on your practice's setup. And then also, it's going to link that document then to that order. So it can kind of help, for clinicians later on who are looking for this documentation, they can see that information. So in addition to in document management, you may be saying, this is something that really should be handled by more of on the clinical side, so less someone who's doing the scanning. So the answer to that is this can also be done directly in the PAQ itself. So basically, in the PAQ, again, as long as the item that is coming through, is linked to a, order result document type, then we'll see kind of a similar section down there to go ahead and link. Again, you would click on referrals. You can sort by date. You would check off the appropriate order and again, click complete. You also have the ability at this point to use that unlink tab. So if this is something, maybe you're having the scanning staff go ahead and link these, and then as a clinician, so again, keeping in mind this is the PAQ, so typically providers, but you could also have delegates that manage this. So they would have the ability to unlink at this stage as well if they're going through and they realize this isn't the correct referral order that it's linked to, and they need to manage that. They will have the ability to do that from the PAQ as well. So then you may be asking, okay, that's all great if we have a scanned item to link the order to. So if you received a document or an image, report, whatever it is back, that's great. You can obviously use that functionality we just talked about. But what about in the scenario where there isn't anything received back? So in that case, you would follow your typical process to follow up on the completion. If an appointment was scheduled, or the consult or surgery was had, whatever the referral was for. Then your other option is you can go into the order management template, is typically the easiest way. You would find that referral order in the grid. You would click edit, and then you're going to receive a screenshot, a pop-up that's like the screenshot here. So this gives you the option to just go ahead and check off. You can see those two highlighted boxes, so received and then completed. So you can check those off, and then it will default to today's date, but you can modify that. So if you're going back, retroactively doing cleanup, maybe you'd rather put in, you see there's, other fields where you can add some more details if you would like, reason or comments if you want to add more details about the completion of that referral, and then you would click save and close. So that really is going to also, give you another option to manually close that order without actually having anything scanned to go along with it. So those are kind of the two main options that you have for closing the loop for those referrals.
Awesome. Okay, well, Lexi just made my life extremely easy, because that order edit pop-up you just saw is the exact workflow to meet this measure, CMS 50. So keep that screenshot in mind. The HQM is looking at one of those two fields for credit, the completed or received. And again, just want to reiterate, we already talked about this, the provider who sent the referral is reporting this measure. Now, something to note that's different from the HIE send measure is that internal referrals are going to be included in this measure denominator no matter what. So even if you check the internal referral checkbox, they're going to be excluded from the HIE send measure, but they're still going to be included in this quality measure. And I also need to point out that this measure is going to be focused on referrals only. Don't expect to see any orders. You're not going to see any MRIs or things in here. This measure specifically focuses on referral orders. Again, following the same trend here, this measure can be worked anytime during the full year reporting period. So again, keep in mind this measure is under the quality category, and that's a full year reporting. As well as this measure is not topped out, which means providers can actually earn the full 10 points on this measure without actually achieving 100%. This is huge this year, as benchmarks have gotten significantly harder, and benchmarks are actually what determine your quality score for each measure, or they've been removed altogether. So we want to take advantage of measures like this who have a benchmark and you're able to earn full credit for. Again, this should also apply to almost every specialty out there, which is going to be important down the line when the MIPS program eventually switches to MIPS value pathways. By learning and investing in this workflow now, it's a measure that you can use for years to come. So I will go ahead and get off my MIPS soapbox and let Lexi kind of quickly wrap things up here by going over tracking referrals.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. So I know we're getting close to time here, so I will go over this last section, and then we will stay on for questions if you're able to stay with us. So the last topic that last but definitely not least, is tracking referral order statuses. So, it's all great to say, okay, we have these referrals we're being diligent about sending out. If they're coming back in, we're closing the loop. But, it can be really difficult, just like a lot of things, when it's coming from disparate sources, is how do we really know, okay, where we potentially have issues, where we're not getting responses back or follow-up is needed. So really, like the answer for most things in NextGen is within reporting. So in the EHR, you do have the ability to set up a report that can allow you can kind of customize it as you see fit, but to really track the order status for outgoing referrals. So you can do this in a lot of different ways, tweak it to your practice, but if you want to only have it come back and show you ones that are marked as not completed, if you could also use this potentially to include completed orders, maybe to track to see, okay, how many referral orders are we sending out that are being followed up on, things like that. So I do not expect you to memorize all the specifications we have. This is just kind of our recommendation for how you can set up the report itself. So as Chelsea mentioned in the beginning, these slides will be sent out as well as the recording down the line. So you will have this to look back on if you did want to set this up in your own practice. My recommendation would definitely be to set this up as a memorized report in the EHR. So that way, you don't have to create it each time. You can just kind of go ahead and run that as needed, or even, go as far as to set this up and then in the BBP to run automatically. So, periodically, you're not having to remember to check in on these. It's really up to your practice and how you want to use it. So finally, we just have an example of what the report could look like. Obviously you can customize this. You can kind of make it, look how you would like in the columns that you'd like to see for your particular practice. But you can kind of see an example here of potentially different statuses, which, like I said, you could also filter by those. So if we only want to see ones that are, ordered, or the ones that are not completed, we have some options here to hopefully give your practice some, ability to kind of see into the whole referral process and where you stand. Okay, so with that being said, we've reached the end of our webinar for today. So hopefully you feel a little bit better about your understanding about how to utilize NextGen really to send and also manage those referral orders. And then even some ways to get credit for some of those government incentive programs such as MIPS. So to wrap things up, I will turn it back over to Chelsea. She'll go through a few next steps, and then we will answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you so much, Lexi. And again, thank you, Holland and Lindsay, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Next steps, as we say at every webinar, please visit us at itenif.com or dashealth.com and see, what other ways we might be able to help your practice. You've already signed up for our informative webinars, obviously, so way to go there. And also just be aware that we do have 3-day fixed on-site consultations that can cover and help with things like clinical workflow, revenue cycle and front office, and technology and performance. And also, do consider that we do offer tiered MIPS assistance offerings that offer personalized assistance with HQM reporting and MIPS tracking and submission. So with that being said, and without any further delay, let's move on to your questions because we have received a lot. We understand that you may have to drop off as we have about 1 minute left, but we're going to go through all the questions. So if you have to jump off, you can always catch them when I send out a link to the recording. So we're just going to go through them in the order that we received them. And if you have any, feel free to keep chiming in. So starting with the first one, can't we automatically get 40 points in PI by attestation only for the bidirectional HIE measure?
I can grab that one. Yes, you are absolutely correct. So there is a third option available. You don't have to report HIE send or HIE receive. You can attest to bidirectional HIE. Just note you have to have care quality in place in order to attest yes for that measure when using NextGen. And if you do have care quality in place and it's in use and enabled, there is actually a link that NextGen typically sends out at the end of the year to request a letter to have for an audit purpose. So if you have care quality in place, you can absolutely take that avenue.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. Next question, what's the best practice to follow up turnaround? Let me reread that. What's the best practice follow-up to turn around on for referrals? 4 weeks, 3 months? Help.
No problem. So best practice, I mean, this is kind of a toughie, from a measure perspective, when you're looking at following up on referrals to then close the loop, you technically have until the end of the year. So the reporting period is a full year. You have until December 31st to follow up on those referrals you sent out to try and get a report back and close that loop before December 31st, before the end of the reporting period. Best practice, obviously just as soon as possible or as soon as that information is made available to you, would be great to have that in and have that updated. So again, the patient's record is absolutely complete, never on the care teams in the know.
Great, thanks so much. Next question. Can the scanned documents and categories be attached?
Sure, I can go ahead and take this one, Chelsea. So I believe this question maybe came in before we got to
I think it
the
did,
part
yeah.
about linking. Yeah, so the answer is definitely yes. Yeah, so you can, as we mentioned, those scanned documents, so either from document management or the PAQ, they can be attached to the order.
Great, thanks. Okay, next question. Under what circumstances would you use the HIDE provider icon?
I can grab this one too. So I'm assuming, I believe that this question came in when we were talking about
This was pretty early
NextGen
on
Share,
too.
I'm assuming. Yeah, because it's kind of early on. So I believe the question is, when, in what circumstance would you hide a provider from the NextGen directory, NextGen Share directory? So really, I mean, we see this mostly if you know of a bad direct address. So you may have sent things previously, or a provider maybe that is no longer with the practice. I will say that should be updating. So either whether it's NextGen, it should be updating like when a provider is no longer marked as rendering in file maintenance, or if it's not, it's an outside practice, that should be updated. But there's cases when that doesn't happen. So you would basically hide it within your own practices NextGen Share directory, just so you eliminate the possibility of a NextGen Share message being sent to basically nowhere. So if they were talking about NextGen Share, that would be some of the use cases.
Great, thanks, Alexi. Next question. How do referring providers who do not use NextGen see the NextGen Share referral order?
I can grab this one as well. So yeah, it's a great question. So if you're not familiar, yeah, NextGen Share, obviously it's a NextGen product, but it really is just a way to connect you with any provider that has a direct address. So it's not unique to NextGen. So you can send NextGen Share referral orders and documentation, everything like that. It's kind of the beauty of it. You can send it to anyone who has an electronic health record. So it does allow you to really communicate in the network with any provider theoretically that has a direct address. I'm sure that there are some mom and pop, EHRs out there that maybe doesn't have the functionality, but that is one of kind of the benefits, is that they would receive it in their system regardless of the EHR software that they use.
Okay, great. It looks like we have another one for you here, Lexi. If we get a referral or HIE document into the clinical message manager, but the patient has not established care with us, is there a specific workflow for that?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So in the clinical message manager, if you aren't kind of familiar with the way it works, is when a document comes in, it will attempt to match that with existing patient data, or with an existing order, or whatever the case may be, to kind of trying to make that match. But in the case if there isn't an existing patient, so it will give you the opportunity, like I said, it will try to make the match first. If it can't, there's some auto matching functionality, but you can also search. So maybe if it's the case of you have enough information to safely, connect the two, but for some reason just not, automatically able to connect it, you can do it that way. And then I would say really the third option is if that patient truly is just not in your system, so maybe they're being referred in as a brand new patient, you would have the ability to create a chart if needed, and then you could match that record. So you would have that option if they aren't already an existing patient.
Great, thank you so much for that answer. Next question, is there any way to link multiple orders to the same document, i.e. a lab result document that includes BMP, A1C, lipids, etc.?
Okay, I'm going to take this one too. So yeah, there's really the functionality to link is just kind of a one-to-one. So I understand the need there, but really I would say once you link that document to the order, it's going to mark it as complete for that piece of it. And then if you received multiple documents, you could continue to scan those into the patient's chart just like you normally would, just you would leave out the linking piece of it. And so then that way you would be able to still view, all of those documents within the categories tab of the patient history toolbar, but it would just be the one document would be linked to that specific order.
Great, thank you. Next question, can you limit on referral results to coming into the PAQ, or is it all in document management items?
So I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, I think it's saying, can you basically limit what information that's being scanned in actually goes to the PAQ? Hopefully I'm understanding that correctly. If that is the question, then yes, you can definitely do that. That is part of the setup of the document types that you do in file maintenance. Basically, if you check off, there's a box that says, similar to like that potential order result, there's also a box that says signature required. And if that's checked, then that will, then you choose the provider from the dropdown when filing, and then that would go to the PAQ. So that is a way to ensure, those are going to the PAQ, but, maybe if it's a document that doesn't necessarily need to, go into the PAQ for sign off, just needs to go directly into the chart, then you would just, that signature required would be unchecked.
Okay, great. You can do this for scanned images, but not HIE documents, correct? That was asked in the last,
so
like,
this
10 minutes of the presentation.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I'm assuming, so yeah, basically I think the linking is probably what they're referring to. So yes, that would be, that functionality would really be for any scanned images that you are scanning in.
Okay. If you use the attachment section to add attachments, do you have to use Share for them to go out, or will they go out if we fax?
So that's a good question. So yeah, if you are, not sending things out through like NextGen Share, so with the electronic, obviously that would definitely send out those attachments. If you are faxing, when you would be creating that fax, you would be able to select and choose those attachments. So yes, that would be possible.
Great. When we receive an electronic referral, is there a way to send a document back through Share without creating a referral?
So that's a good, yeah, let me just read that one more time. So there really isn't a way that I can think of. I mean, I guess you can technically, without creating a new referral order, you can use Share through the medical summary utility. So if you like went through that option, you could select, that particular document and then use the Share functionality there. And then you have the ability, if you're from home, explain you can link it to a referral order, but it's not required. So that would be kind of my recommendation for that would be the medical summary utility.
Okay, great. And it looks like this is our last question, but if we accidentally skipped one of your questions, or if you think of any more questions that you didn't have time to ask, please feel free to reach out to us directly. We'd be happy to answer them over email. That's why we're here. We love to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And with that, I'm going to do the last question. Insurance card is scanned into the EPM side, but frequently needed for referrals. Is there a way for importing that information over to EHR or added to the referral?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and one that I've definitely not the first time that I've heard that, because I understand it is when insurance card obviously the process should be scanned into the PM application. Yeah, that really should be the way. So unfortunately, it's not really a quick fix for that, short of like a customization. Like I'm sure there's, you can come up with some customization to bring that over, maybe into like the categories tab or something like that. Really the way that I have seen, and it's not the prettiest workflow, but it works, is a lot of times that insurance card, if you're familiar, you can copy and paste that. So once it's been scanned into the PM application, and then it will be saved to like a network folder and then added into categories. Like I said, not the prettiest use, but that is, potentially one option to get that into categories and then would allow you to send it. Another option could be printing it out and scanning back in, which, again, obviously I hate even saying that because that's paper and it's waste. But yeah, that's really the copy and pasting to like a network folder and then adding it in is short of like a customization is really the method I've seen used. So unfortunately, I know that wasn't probably the answer you were hoping for, but.
Okay, and with that, I think that we're going to go ahead and end for today. But again, if you think of any more questions or if we accidentally skipped over yours, please do reach out to us. We're here to help. We're happy to. And I'll be sending out a link to the slides and recording within the next week here. So you can always reply back to that email as well. And I'll make sure the questions get to the right people to get them answered. So thank you all for joining us today and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.